ACT Airlines on 20 October departs the runway in Hong Kong. 2 are killed, 4 are rescued from a 747 cargo jet. What in the world happened? I want to take you into some audio because the tail of the aircraft actually comes off. And there's so many question marks here, all right? But I'm going to give you, before we get done, I think I'm 90% sure what happened to this aircraft, and nobody else is talking about it. So let's take a look at listen to the audio as they come in for their landing.
Approach you, good night, Emirates 9788, descending flight level 110,
Okay, so who is ACT Airlines and what are they doing under an Emirates call sign? So they come in under Emirates 9788 and they're landing at Hong Kong. Now I've been in and out of Hong Kong twice in my career. I haven't been there a lot of times, but it's where all the heavy metal goes. And for sure, it's an active airport. You see more 747s and A380s here than just about any place else in the world. This ACT Airlines is operating under what's called a wet lease with Emirates. So Emirates just doesn't have enough capacity. They're waiting for 747s to be built for their cargo division. They're going to go out and rent a 747. That's what a wet lease is. And the wet part is they rent the entire thing. They rent the crew, they rent the aircraft, and the fuel that goes into it. So all that stuff is supplied by ACT Airlines. They just, Emirates just pays them a fee, and then they paint the airplane, or in this case, they don't. It just says ACT Airlines on the side still, and they just lease it, but they're operating under the Emirates call sign. It's owned by a Turkish concern. This is a Turkish trained and Turkish pilots on this airplane. They come in now and they're asking for an unrestricted inbound arrival into Hong Kong. I'll explain what that means in a minute.
Emirates 9788, runway 07 turn at direct lines, meeting high speed.
Okay, so that's exactly what that means. When they say unrestricted in, they're asking for a high-speed arrival. Below 10,000 feet, everywhere on the planet, the speed limit is 250 knots. If you ask and get permission for a high-speed or an unrestricted arrival, you can fly faster than the 250 mile an hour speed limit. They're coming in and they're doing that. That's fine. It actually has nothing to do with what happened to this airplane ultimately. We'll get to that in just a second. Let's listen in.
Starting the line and runway use 0 left and high speed approach, Emirates 9788.
Okay, and that's the last we hear from Emirates 9788. There are no more audio recordings of them until they touch down. Looking at the ADS-B data, which gives us the airspeed and the altitude of the airplane, they're on a completely normal approach. This is a stabilized approach all the way through. It's not like they're high and fast and they're trying to get down. They do come in a little bit hot in the beginning, but they slow down to the normal approach speeds. I think they touch down at like 134 knots, which is completely normal for this size, a 747. They touch down at the 1,000-foot mark or just beyond it on this runway, which is completely normal. It's a very long runway, 07 left at Hong Kong. And then they roll out on the center line and everything looks completely normal with everything that they're doing. But at the 5,000-foot mark, they veer hard left off the runway. They go through the grass and the dirt. They hit the seawall. The aircraft turns completely around. The tail section is completely missing from the airplane. There's extensive damage to the nose section of the airplane and nothing but question marks on how that happened. I think I know what happened. In fact, I'm willing to bet my producer's next paycheck on what happened, but I'll give you that in a second. Let's take a look now at this picture of this ADS-B. This is from FlightAware. All right. And ADS-B data, once you're on the runway, it doesn't give you much in terms of altitude. You know, you'd have to climb up to 50 or 100 feet and back down to get any sort of variation. So there's no variation really in the altitude once they get on the runway. It does say that they touch down 134 knots. As you're looking at the picture, and then the little green dots are all data reporting points that ADS-B has recorded through FlightAware 24. They slow down to 90 knots at about the 5,000-foot mark on the runway, so they've had 4,000 feet to decelerate. They've only gone from 134 knots to 90 knots. Typically, with that kind of distance, excuse me, Typically, with that kind of distance, you would slow down to 60 knots or less and just be ready to kind of go off on one of the high-speed taxiways, which is off to the right side of this runway. And for some unexplained reason, at 90 knots, they veer off the left. They have enough momentum still to tear the tail off the aircraft and also to spin completely around and do a lot of damage to the nose. And as I'm looking at these photos, I'm like, what in the world? How could that have possibly happened? Take a look at the nose of this aircraft. Now, here's a still photo of the nose. That's extensive damage to the nose of the airplane from an aircraft that touched down on speed, on center line, exactly on the runway where it was supposed to. What in the world? Did the nose gear collapse? Did one of the main mounts collapse? Both of those things are still players, and they're distinct possibilities. I don't think that's what happened. All right, let's take a look at video of a news report from a distance. This is out on the bay looking at the aircraft, and I want you to notice some things here. So I'm going to run this video right now. All right, there's a rescue boat coming in. I'm going to stop it right here. We'll be right back, but first, a quick word from our sponsor. A few days ago, 2 Delta jets bumped into each other while taxiing at LaGuardia. Nobody was hurt, just some dented wingtips, but it caused hours of delays and grounded dozens of passengers. And yet, depending on where you get your news, you might not have heard about it. That's exactly the kind of gap that Ground News helps you catch. Ground News is a news comparison platform that gathers and compares stories from over 50,000 sources around the world, so you never miss out on news. You can see coverage across the political spectrum, the factuality of outlets, and even financial ownership information. When this Delta incident happened, almost 400 sources reported on the story, with 22% from the left and 17% from the right. The majority came from the political center. Seeing that breakdown matters because every headline brings a different framing, and bias often lives in what's left out, not just what's said. With Ground News, you get instant situational awareness for the news, just like pilots need in the cockpit. And the best tool for that is the blind spot feed. It highlights stories that are covered by only one side of the political spectrum. It's how you spot what you're not seeing so you can get a balanced view. And right now, Ground News is offering my viewers 40% off their unlimited access Vantage plan. Just scan the QR code or click the link in the description. That's ground.news/Captain Steeeve. Subscribe today and don't get caught flying blind. As you look at the aircraft, you can see the slides deployed on the right side. There's a slide out the left side that you can't see. The tail section is completely missing from the aircraft. This would have had to have been a catastrophic crash for them to lose the tail section of the airplane, unless one other thing happened, and that's this. It wasn't the gear. I don't think it was a brake failure. I don't think they just veered off for no reason in particular. I think they veered off when that tail section of the airplane broke off. Why would it break off? It's something that's called a porpoised landing. What in the world is a porpoised landing? When I say porpoised, I don't mean purposed. I mean porpoise, like the dolphin, right? Like you see dolphins jump out of the water. Every once in a while, an aircraft will get into a porpoise landing. I had one in my career, and it was the worst landing I ever had. It's real easy to do a lot of damage to an airplane. This was back in my Navy days when I was flying P-3s. I was out on what's called a functional check flight, where we did some maintenance on the airplane. I just did a video on a Hawker jet that crashed in Michigan on a functional check flight. I was a functional check flight trained pilot, and they had done something to the landing gear, and they wanted me on purpose to do a firmer than normal landing. Well, I did all right. And so what happens is normally on a landing, and a jet will come in, or any airplane for that matter, it'll come in like this, a little bit nose up, right? And these are the main mounts. This is the nose gear. And the aim is to land with the nose up and land on the main mounts. And then you smoothly fly the nose gear down, and then the airplane just kind of rolls out. Now you're a big old tricycle going 100 miles an hour. And then you just get on the brakes gently, bring it into reverse, and you slow down nice and on center line, right? It works out great that way. Every once in a while, you can land real flat, and we can't see this from the ADS-B data. We can't see how flat they were on their landing. All we know is that they were on a stable profile, and they landed down around 1,000 foot down the runway. If they landed on all three, the nose gear and both main mounts at the same time, there's a tendency for the aircraft to bounce. back up into the air, because it's not designed to land that way. It's designed to ease in on the main mounts and then lower the nose. But if all three land at the same time, the airplane will bounce. Depending on how it bounces, if it bounces nose first, right, which is a tendency for that to happen, then the nose gear will strike next. If that nose gear strikes, it pops the nose up and the main mount strike. When the main mount strike, the bouncing moment now gets more violent as the airplane goes down the runway. It's kind of like being on the electronic bull at the bar, right? And at first it's kind of gentle, and all of a sudden it really gets going and throws you off, right? This could happen with an airliner this size. Very, very rare that this happened, but it's also rare that an airplane lands stable at 1,000 feet on speed, and the tail section completely departs the aircraft 5,000 feet down the runway, and the nose gets all crushed in. What in the world caused all that damage to the nose? We can look at that picture and see the nose damage. And that's not just the nose gear collapsed. If the nose gear collapsed, the airplane's going to rest on the nose, and it's going to keep skidding forward straight down that runway. And it's going to do some damage to the underside of the airplane, but it's not going to rip the whole front of the nose off. The first thing that it clued me into the Porpoise landing was the damage to the nose, because as the airplane is bouncing, it comes down like this. And at some point, and I'm guessing somewhere around 5,000 foot down that runway, the movement got so violent that they struck the nose. I'm thinking probably the nose gear did collapse at that point. They did all that damage to the nose, and then one more violent hit to the back, and that tail section cracked off the back. Now, I don't think it's not on the, we can't see it near the runway or off the runway. I think that tail section's in the water. I'm looking and I haven't seen any photos of where the tail section is. So the only logical conclusion is it's somewhere in the bay. So I think it stayed attached, but once that nose, the tail section cracked and came off partially, that's what caused the nose of the airplane to violently go to the left. They veered off, still going 90 miles an hour, plenty of energy for them to go all the way through the dirt. Now the airplane, it pivots on that left side. Maybe one of the main mounts dug in, or it broke down altogether. It's kind of going through the dirt and the grass. The airplane is pivoting now to the right. That tail section is getting slung out. Think about when you were at the roller rink, or you were ice skating with your friends and you were the one on the end, right? You got really whipping real hard. That's exactly what happened to that tail section. It whipped so hard it brought the whole airplane all the way around 180 degrees, and it breaks off now, sinks into the bay, and the whole airplane comes to rest with the fuselage and the cockpit pointing back towards the runway. But the whole thing now is in the water. The pilots are able to get out. They deploy the slides, and they are able to slide down the rafts to safety. 2 people were killed. Who was killed? It was 2 people in the wrong place at the wrong time. It was some people on patrol that in a pickup truck that do patrol operations around the airport. They were off the runway, and they were beyond the fence, and they just horrible timing. This aircraft ran over them. They were retrieved from the bay. One had died immediately. Another died in the hospital a little bit later. And that's really the sad tragedy of all of this. Just horrible timing on their part. But a porpoise landing is the only thing that explains it. Let me show you a video of a porpoise landing. All right. This is a much smaller airplane. All right. I admit that. But we're going to take what happens to this little bitty Cessna, and you're going to see the dynamic, and let's multiply that times a 747. Let's watch this little guy come in, right? His friends are narrating as he goes. Here he comes, here he comes. Watch what he does. He lands on all 3. He bounces, nose, gear, nose again.
Oh my God! Right rudder.
And then he just hits the gas and goes back into the air. So you saw what happened to this guy. He came in and he bounced on all 3. The nose on that aircraft, which is heavy, came down and he hits the nose gear. And that nose gear then bounces him back on the main mounts. The main mounts bounce and he goes back on the nose. Then he goes back on the main mounts one more time. At that point, he hits the power, all right, and flies out of it. I don't think this 747 could have hit the power and flown out of it at that point. They're just kind of along for the ride. And that ride took them 4,000 feet down the runway before that aircraft basically kind of came apart at that point. The nose veers off to the left. The tail swings out to the right. The aircraft has enough momentum to take it all the way into the bay. The tail keeps going. As it comes around, it breaks off altogether, sinks into the water, and the tail turns around and comes back. Now, whether the tail is someplace else or not, I don't know. I just can't find a picture of it. But at some point, that tail departed from the aircraft. I think that's what caused the swerve, and it caused it to go into the bay. We're going to know more when the report comes out for sure. Lots of question marks with this one. Could it have been a nose collapse? Yes. Could it have been a main mount collapse? Yes. Was it the reversers? Nah, probably not. It's not enough asymmetrical thrust to cause this. None of those other things, the reversers, the nose gear, the main mount, would cause the tail of a 747 to depart. The violence of a porpoise landing would. And I'm betting my producer's next paycheck that that's what happened to this aircraft. Well, I'm looking forward to finding out more details when they come out. When they do, we will follow up with a video on this. But right now, Captain Steeeve saying, I think it was a porpoise landing, and that's what caused the damage. It's a shame. It's a shame that those airport workers were just in the wrong place at the wrong time. We pray for their families, and our thoughts and prayers certainly go out to the fatalities in this one. But now you know. I'm Captain Steeeve. Fly safe. And there's other videos that we've done with things that have gone wrong on a runway. This one was wrong for sure. If you want to check out any of those other videos, take a look at this.